Whether you unlocked him the first time around or got ready for the second chance, odds are pretty high that you have an unfinished General Skywalker lying around. Sure, he makes a nifty Night Sister counter, but is that really what you want to be using your shiny new toy on? How about using him as a reliable Darth Revan counter instead? If that's something you'd be interested in, you've come to the right place. Let's jump in. The first thing you need to know is that this team is not mod hungry. That's actually the biggest reason I've come to love it. It lets me have a reliable Darth Revan counter available without having to steal my best mods from other teams. It's also a setup that gets away with having less relic levels than the team that you're attacking, although there is an exception that we'll get to later. It's also a team that exists on its own, without pulling key characters away from other teams. In general, it's just a team that you can set and forget about it once you've locked it in. It's fantastic. The more surprising benefit, I'd say, is that it doesn't seem to be falling too hard in Arena. Now, I'm not saying this team isn't beatable, but for whatever reason, people seem to not want to deal with attacking me. For comparison, every night that I left a team like Jedi Knight Revan or Shakti Lead up in my shard, I always fell into the high 50s or 60s within 12 hours. But when I leave General Skywalker up on defense, I can always reach first place without refreshing. Your results can and will vary here, but this was a pleasant surprise for me that felt worth mentioning. Lastly, there's no difference in performance between 5 or 6 stars here. Seriously, look at this picture. It's staggering how little this mattered. It's ridiculous. Now, depending on the state of your 501st, there are some negatives. First off is that this is definitely one of the most expensive Zeta teams to date. Now, there are some exceptions that we'll get to, but generally every Zeta is worth having in some respect, and it could take a while to catch up on these if you aren't ready yet. The second downside is that this team can and will get messy on banners. I've been testing the upper limits of this team, and it wasn't until my team started getting above 23 combined relic levels that I started being able to get through matches without somebody dying. And that's not a consistent occurrence either. But if you're aiming for first place in Kyber or playing around efficiency wins, you really might want to look elsewhere. The last downside I'd say is that there isn't any real defensive use here. General Skywalker lives and dies by his tankiness on defense, and Gear 11 just will not cut it, unless you're trying to sneak it in the rear hoping that they blew their counters already. Let's talk about ranking versions of the team. I've extensively tested every configuration, but the best version of the team I'd have to give to is ARC Trooper. Ahsoka was initially my go-to comfort pick, even after having ARC Trooper unlocked and available, but a recent discovery I made on optimizing the turn order for him completely flipped my opinion overnight. This is especially good news because it means that Ahsoka can go home to Padme. It just feels right. Unfortunately, I made the discovery on this way to use ARC Trooper after he was brought to Gear 13, so I can't say definitively whether or not this would work at Gear 11, but I really welcome all of you to test and let me know how it's working. Tentatively, I'm going to say that I would still trust Ahsoka more than Gear 11 ARC Trooper, but there's definitely some potential to be explored here. Let's talk about Zetas. There are a ton of Zetas to choose from, and I ended up taking all of them eventually as I kept working on the faction, but there are some Zetas that are absolutely required, and some we can push into the blur area. The more Zetas you put on the team, the more consistent your results will be, and things will definitely feel rough with only the bare minimums. For starters, the pairing that makes this entire concept work is the combination of the Chosen One and Hero with No Fear on General Skywalker. The counterattacks combined with the health reduction are what enable us to soften Malik up for an early kill every time that we hit him. 5's Tactical Awareness Zeta is also the main win condition and is absolutely required. This stat share means that every stat that we put into him is effectively put into every 501st clone, state enough how much this matters for the win condition. We need him to die in most cases. If you plan to use Ahsoka instead of ARC Trooper, the assists from her unique Zeta are essential for the starting kill on Bastila, so we'll definitely need that. If you're running her, she'll also need Echo's unique Zeta, which is optional for ARC teams. Let's talk about recommended Zetas. Each one of these serves a purpose to help the consistency of the team by covering for some potential RNG. General Skywalker's lead Zeta is a great first choice that helps pump the damage output of your team. ARC Arsenal is super nice to have if you use Gear 13. It means that you can call ARC Trooper with 5s and get the turret as an extra assist call for some really nice extra damage. Rex Unique Zeta just gives your team much better tempo on using their cooldowns, So I would strongly consider suggesting this, although you could get away with not having it. As your team gets tankier, 5's Domino Squad Zeta starts to shine more. It can also help get your General Skywalker back up faster in that situation. For optional Zetas, General Skywalker's basic Zeta doesn't really have an impact on this strategy aside from calling Ahsoka on a second turn instead of Echo. It could get you an extra shot cleanse, but the timing isn't likely to line up. Let's talk about gearing. 5's is the workhorse of the team. When you give him gear or relic levels, you effectively give them to every 501st clone in your team, making him easily one of the best gear investments in the entire game. For General Skywalker, you can't bring him above gear 11 anyway, but every gear 11 piece does help him stay alive for longer. For Rex, we're really just worried about speed here. The more right side pieces at gear 12 you can give him, the easier he'll be for modding for speed, but this isn't hugely important. For Echo, I personally made the mistake of thinking that he would be some huge damage dealer back when 501st got reworked. For reference, I had pretty average 5. If you're running Arc, I'd say you don't need to worry about his damage much at all. It matters way more for Ahsoka teams. For Ahsoka, I ended up taking mine to Relic 3 for the General Skywalker event, and that's where I ended up testing her. For Arc Trooper, the main concern is getting him 1 speed ahead of Rex. Even with him at Relic 7, his turret damage didn't increase all that much. While it can definitely be nice to have, I didn't really feel that much of an improvement based on the investment. Moving on to execution. Things will be played very differently based on whether you run Arc Trooper or Ahsoka. We'll start with him first. Who you place your turret on depends on the overall strength of the team. If you're fighting against a team with Brood Alpha in Arena, you have to place the turret on Rex to dispel the Breach Taunt a second time. He'll counterattack the first time when Arc goes, and retaunt. Next up is Rex. If he has the turret, aim at the squishiest target for some free damage, or the pre-taunt if it's still up. Marauder is the best first choice if he's present, otherwise start going for HK. From here, use Echo's basic to shoot the Foresight on Darth Revan, use 5 special against the squishy target you chose. If your Arc Trooper is high relic with the Zeta, he can be a great choice to call because you'll get an extra assist from the turret for a lot of extra damage. Lastly, we have General Skywalker. Aim at Malak and use your first special. At first, it didn't seem like the order mattered that much since both will get used anyway, but if the Malak is on the squishy side and you get your double damage, he'll get a bonus turn earlier, and you'll lose some counters on him if you land the double damage. From this point, your General Skywalker will get hit a bunch and counter Malak a bunch, which lets you kill him easily. Your General Skywalker should ideally take a nap before Darth Revan takes his second turn. This doesn't hugely matter on the outcome, it just saves you from getting 5-man feared and gives you 1 fear instead since General Skywalker can't be targeted. Usually, the person to put General Skywalker to sleep is HK-47, so it can be worth leaving him barely alive until after Skywalker gets toppled and then finishing him off. From here, it's just a matter of focusing your damage and avoiding having 5s taunt too much while Skywalker is toppled. Once 5 sacrifices, the damage on your clones will spike absurdly and victory is a guarantee. Let's talk about Ahsoka's version. The reason why I preferred it for so long is that the team goes for a fast kill on Bastila. In this case, there's more RNG present in the turn order, but as long as you have Zetas like Echo's unique Zeta, this kill will be more consistent for you. Rex goes first and uses his special for turn meter. If there are any pre-taunts present, Ahsoka dispels them on the assist. If no pre-taunts are present, go ahead and aim at Bastila. Next up is a triple coin flip between Ahsoka, Echo, and 5s. If Bastila still has Foresight, the ideal first turn is Echo, and using his basic to shoot the Foresight on Bastila. If 5s goes first, you lose some possible damage through the Foresight here, but you can still call Echo assist with decent results. Other than that, the approach stays the same as Arc Trooper. Let's talk about modding. For your convenience, I've created a spreadsheet that allows you to fully calculate your team's speeds based off of your Rex speed, and includes a quick cheat sheet on how I play out each of these teams. The formulas will still be included on the top left, but they're a bit more involved than the Grievous video was, so I figured that this would be useful to have. Rex is the pace car for the team. and everybody else's speed target revolves around him. Generally speaking, your set and primary focus won't matter for him that much, but if you want to aim for a win where 5s doesn't sacrifice, we need to focus on trying to build him to become more durable. Aim for a speed and defense set with 3 protection primaries. If you don't have a fast enough defense set available, a health set will do just fine. For secondaries, bring enough speed to hit your speed target first, but try to keep an eye out for possible secondaries like flat defense. Moving on to 5s. Modding 5s is super entertaining. It's really a fun place to experiment and express yourself a bit. You're really just kind of planning out what stats he's going to give away when he dies. There's no super optimal 100% right way to do it. 4 stats that he can share are speed, offense, protection, and health. Although this team can often end up being shocked when 5 sacrifices, which prevents the extra health from being added to their current pools. For that reason, I try to avoid adding health where I can. There's a little more going on too, as the damage that 5s can dish out is absolutely ridiculous. Since he can't taunt while General Skywalker is taunting, he's generally always going to have double damage until he dies. With this in mind, I've been leaning more and more heavily into focusing on damage output for him, even dipping into crit chance secondaries with a crit damage triangle. This isn't required by any means, but I will say that it's been super fun. The easy approach would be to focus on offense with about 200 speed. 6-dot offense primaries on the triangle and cross, and optionally on the arrow if you can get enough speed. Although ideally you'd want a decently high speed secondary to go with it. Mine doesn't, so it's not the end of the world if you don't have it, but it would be better. For Echo, aim for about 200 speed as well. But really, just focus on critical damage and offense with a decent amount of speed and critical chance. There is one technical point on modding him, which is his grenade does special damage, and High Relic Echo will have a lot more special offense than physical offense, which means that in theory, an offense set is more optimal for his grenade than a crit damage set. However, due to the fact that 5s will share his offense pool, I strongly believe that crit damage is a better choice overall to be ready for your win condition when it comes. Realistically speaking here, just go through your crit damage or offense sets and give him a set you're willing to part ways with. It doesn't have to be your best, but maybe your number 4 or number 5. The lower the relic level your Echo is, the more you might have to invest on mods for him, so just give it a shot and experiment. For General Skywalker, he needs to be set to the speed where he's 1 speed below 100% turn meter when Rex gives turn meter. Focus all of your attention into protection primaries on every slot he has, with enough speed to hit your threshold. You can either go for 3 defense sets for an ARC Trooper team, or a crit damage set for an Ahsoka team. 3 defense sets is ideal, but there isn't much of a difference on the end result to be honest. For ARC Trooper, I'm running a pretty similar setup to 5s, with the biggest change being that he needs to be faster than Rex by 1 speed for this counter to run smoothly. It's okay to cheat lower on his offense here, as the turret doesn't really scale all that well with a ton of extra offense. For Ahsoka, give her a crit damage set with some offense and crit chance focus. She doesn't need too much speed, just enough that she reaches 100% turn meter before Skywalker goes. If you're gear 12, some extra crit chance in her secondaries will also help try to ensure that she'll always crit and get that cleanse on her allies. So that covers most of it. I've seen a lot of people saying that their Skywalker feels useless, so I hope that this can really breathe some life into your excitement for him. There are some pretty dramatic shifts to be made once he reaches 7 stars, so we'll potentially explore those differences in a future video, but it's been really convenient to have this counter as a part of my toolset without disrupting any of my other major teams. And yeah, I hope you have as much fun with this as I am. For more discussion, information, and some of the best theory crafting in the game, head over to discord.io/theplaybook and say hello.